RugbyRenegade.com, the #1 online strength and conditioning program for rugby. Are you ready to get bigger, stronger, fitter, and faster and dominate your opposition? Welcome to the Rugby Renegade Podcast, where we build machines.
Hello and welcome to the Rugby Renegade Podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by Pro Athlete Supplementation. Check them out at pas-nutrition.co.uk for all your supplementation needs. And don't forget that subscribers to the Rugby Renegade program get a 40% discount on retail prices. Yes, welcome back to episode 33 of the Rugby Renegade Podcast. My name's Jamie Bain, and today I interview Ryan Gibney, head strength coach at Athlete Factory Chester and previously high performance manager with Georgia Rugby. Ryan gives us tons of information about his career and how he put things in place with Georgia. That's really interesting, and just loads of information for S&C coaches and rugby players alike for how to improve performance. So give it a listen and let us know what you think. Hi Ryan, welcome to the Rugby Renegade Podcast. Great to have you on. Why don't we start by you just telling our listeners a little bit about your background, how you got into strength and conditioning and some of the sports and teams you've worked with.
Yeah, of course. First of all, thanks for having me on this podcast. I do listen to it when I can, so it's a big honour to be on it. Never thought I'd see myself being on anything like this, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
A little about myself. Where do we begin? Basically, probably like a lot of listeners, and maybe like yourself, I went down the route of playing sport, obviously, first of all, loving sport and loving exercise. My path was somewhat different to some people, as in from school I went into the forces. In the forces is where really I kind of found my love for all things S&C really, and I kind of learned that the hard way by getting injured. I basically had a career-ending injury, forced into going to rehabilitation and things like that, and it pretty much blew my mind on how much people knew about the body and that I've been overtraining for years, where I never knew there was such a thing. Because I was used to that school of thought of more is better, just do this, no counting of reps, no concept of recovery or nutrition, just cracking on. So I kind of got the bug then, and that's when I really started to investigate it further. And that's when I realised this is kind of what I wanted to do. So I went down the personal training route, and then I was always more drawn to sports performance as opposed to body composition and things like that. But like a lot of people, the only information out there was from bodybuilding and powerlifting and that type of stuff. So from there, strength and conditioning was a new thing out. So I went basically into university, doing an S&C degree. From the S&C degree, done an internship, which is where I began, which was at Warrington Wolves in Rugby League. Made a few good connections at Warrington Wolves. Found myself a mentor, which I'll touch on later more, a guy called Craig White, who's very well known and respected in the industry. From there, Warrington Wolves, that was my first role. So my first role was Rugby League, being from the northwest of England. That's kind of that's kind of the big sport up here, except for football. From there, I'd done some consultancy stuff, went into Rugby Sevens. From Rugby Sevens, after a few years more at Warrington Wolves, I moved into basically Georgia. I went to Georgia Rugby Union as the head of S&C, which was a good gig. From that role, done some more consultancy gigs. I went to places like Sri Lanka, done some more stuff with Sevens. But my main role then was I was the high performance manager basically. So the head of high performance for Georgia Rugby Union up until June this year.
Cool.
And that's pretty much me, mate. And I went round the houses to get to the point, but there you go.
No. So obviously, tons of experience, and like we tend to start by kind of going into your S&C philosophy. What's difficult to answer in a nutshell, but what would you say your philosophy is?
God, it's I probably stole this quote from somebody else, but one size fits nobody.
Yeah.
So my philosophy really, it's more about longevity. It used to just be about getting like big and strong and basically getting on the pitch and being physically dominating. Now it's more, I like to produce robust, physically dominating players. I like to think that's a kind of what I'm known for. but a little bit of longevity. The older I've gotten, the more senior players I've worked with, especially in international rugby, I've kind of evolved more into really bespoke my programs and my training to basically get, everybody big, strong and explosive, that's a given. But I'm more focused on getting that transfer to the pitch now. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. And what are your kind of approaches to make sure, because I mean anyone can get people stronger in the gym. How do you get it to transfer onto the pitch?
Yeah, well, there's a few methods really I like to use, but my key thing which I'm kind of really big on is basically combat conditioning, collision-based fitness. For me, that is the bridge. That is the bridge from the gym to the pitch. It's all well and good creating these, really gym-strong guys who can shift tons of weight in the gym, throw tin everywhere, but then, they're soft as anything on the pitch. It's all about, getting that strength into a usable form. So I like things like that. I like using a lot of sled work. I like using sled work kind of for horizontal force. So lads are pushing a lot of weight in the horizontal force, as we do on the pitch. And they're just my basic thing for the transition from gym to pitch would be mainly based around combat and collision based stuff.
Yeah. No, I think that the combat and collision stuff, like talking like wrestling as well. I know Craig White is big into using wrestling, and it ties in the physical and the mental as well, because it's a mental challenge in some of the the stuff you can do.
Massively,
so definitely see how that transfers onto the pitch. Now, when we're talking about, obviously spoke about getting players stronger and more powerful, what's kind of your go-to training methods for getting an athlete stronger quickly? Yeah,
I've always been a disciple of Westside really when it comes to that. I'm all for, if you want to know something, then seek out somebody who's better than you are on it. So, there's no stronger place in the planet than Westside. Yeah. So I do like a Westside approach. But to get to the nuts and bolts of it, technique-wise, do you mean? What kind of things do I like to use?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm really big on clusters. I like clusters for strength. I also like them for hypertrophy. Yeah. I am very conjugated in my approach to, program design. But when my approach to Westside isn't kind of true Westside, my max effort, I like to go slightly sub-maximal. I don't really feel the need to go beyond 90% with most players, just because the risk-reward for me just doesn't make sense. I know there's a lot of research out there stating sub-maximal stuff can get you great benefits, but, I don't pretend to be a scientist. Like most S&C coaches, I've got an S&C science underpinning, but, I'm not a researcher, but for me and my own research and my own experience, I think 85 to 95 is the sweet spot for strength.
Yeah, and in terms of like you said about Westside, I like what you're saying, that you could go and learn from people who are experts in strength, but then what you've done is applied it to your environment with your players, and that's what works for you, and that's what it's all about, really, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
So, talked about strength and power and transferring it to the pitch. Like, what about conditioning? What are your favourite like tools or even sessions you've done that are tough for rugby conditioning?
I've got anyone who's worked with me can probably tell you more than I can. But yeah, again, coming from the stuff that I learned from Craig, and I've done a lot of work with Craig White on the combat stuff. We put a few workshops together and things. Yeah. But I'm really big on the combat collision based stuff. Yeah. For me, collision, it's the king of fatigue. That is where most of the fatigue in the sport comes. From my point of view, from my side of the world, if you like, I think that the running bit isn't where the collision comes from. Isn't where the fatigue comes from. I think the fatigue is coming from the collisions, be it with a floor, be it with a person, just the nature of the sport itself. I think it comes from collision, so it will be combat stuff. I've integrated this in weight sessions with great success. So as opposed to a conventional kind of contrast, you'll go from a max effort lift to the likes of a heavy prowler or a tire flip. You might go from a push to a pull. So it could be a floor press into a kind of grapple. You could be pulling a sled or an odd object and then going to a press or a jump, whatever works for you, whatever works for your guys, whatever gets them moving. To then the polar opposite will be on the pitch, and it'll be similar to repeated high intensity efforts. We'll be doing small blocks. We'll be going in, it may start on a wrestle, there may be a few down and ups, into some kind of collision, up again, change over, keep it going. Right down to simple efforts as just bag hits and flips, hitting a bag, getting to your feet, getting back down. Just getting really efficient in them chaotic environments to meet the chaotic nature of the game.
Yeah, no, I like what you're saying about the chaotic environment. That's, like I say, you can't get that just from a pre-programmed running session or even conditioning sessions.
I think a lot of the time we're focused too much on kind of work-rest ratios.
Yeah.
But the game in itself is chaotic, so having fixed kind of linear work and rest isn't always the best approach, in my opinion. I think it's good to vary it up, as long as the quality's there, and quality being the key word for me. If we're getting quality efforts, then keep it going. Once that quality breaks down, stop it. Yeah. And play around with your athletes. Find your sweet spot.
Yeah, you're right. You shouldn't be. I mean, work to rest ratios are great for a guide, but you shouldn't be kind of stuck to them. You stick rigidly to them. Like you've got to see, like, what we want to do is get them producing quality efforts and then increase the amount. So sometimes you're gonna have to put rest in, otherwise you're just going to be enforcing bad technique and just gets into a slog.
Getting that key of that repetition and quality, I think, for me.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess big point there would be adaptable and increase the amount of quality you can produce. Yeah,
very much so, but let it be chaotic. It doesn't have to stick to the norm. Look at the demands of the sport, look at the demands of your player and each individual position, and have a play with it. Don't be scared to experiment.
Yeah, definitely. Now, this is something I've wanted to ask on the podcast for a bit. It's kind of a bit of a debate that comes out every now and then, and you often hear Austin Healey on BT Sport talking about people doing too much weights and not enough skill work, and that's obviously quite difficult for us to hear as strength coaches. But do you think Northern Hemisphere? I mean, sometimes they say that it's worse in the Northern Hemisphere. Do you think it's worse in the Northern Hemisphere, and that players do too much gym work compared to skill work?
Very good question. But I think, again, I don't think we do. I think what it is I think we have a completely different approach in the Northern Hemisphere to the Southern Hemisphere. I think in the Northern Hemisphere there's still a big focus on getting people as big and as strong as possible.
Yeah.
Whereas in the Southern Hemisphere, they're more about kind of, I wouldn't say relative strength, it's the wrong word, but from what I've seen, my perception is they focus on basically purely transferability to the pitch and performance. They seem to be doing a lot more stuff round kind of working at different joint angles, producing different force there, and it's more about power. I see it. It's more about kind of the more working on the opposite end of the curve to us, the more down on the force velocity curve, working more in the region of everything's got to function, everything's directed towards speed and pace of the game. Yeah. And if you look how they play and how they condition, everything's about that quick pace of the game and repeatability.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think you're right. I think it's a bit of a cop out sometimes from rugby coaches, maybe, that we're doing too much gym sort of work. I think our focus is to tie in with what the rugby coaches are doing, and maybe it's just everyone looks at the All Blacks, don't they, and the skill level they've got. I don't think that's just because they're not doing as much weights as us. When they get into that international setup, I think it's a cultural thing, and it's come from rugby being their number one sport in New Zealand and having good opportunities to play at young ages.
Massively. And I think the problem, I know it's a lot less than it used to be, but the likes of in the Northern Hemisphere, especially in the UK a few years back, we were terrible for early specialisation.
Yeah.
Putting tags on people when they're 12 and 13 years old, you're a prop. I'm missing that massive part of playing the sport. But yeah, I'm not going down that road. That's a whole other debate altogether. But I think that's a big part of the Southern Hemisphere success as well. They play a lot of games. Nobody's got a position. Everybody's got a massive skill base, and then they build on top of that.
No, I agree. I mean, you look at it's obviously very anecdotal, but you look at some players or some of the elite players that come through, and they don't end up in their position they played as a kid.
Yeah.
But often they're in that 8, 9, 10 sort of position as a kid, because they just get so many more touches of the ball, so so many more opportunities to develop decision making and skills and things like that. And then kind of as they develop physically, that kind of pushes them into more of a positional bracket, but they've got that awesome skill set, and that's what kind of sets them out above the rest.
Yeah, definitely. And everything they do looks like they're still having fun and playing games, doesn't it? They're still relaxed and composed.
Yeah, that's it. You see like a natural athlete, because they've had so much exposure to it. Yeah, so well, we might have touched on it, I don't know, but this is a question we ask all the guests on the podcast, and you'll have heard it. It's what's the biggest mistake rugby players make when it comes to strength and conditioning?
Basically trying to do things too soon, basically trying to focusing on the wrong things, basically, because like I said a bit earlier, people get in a gym, they're getting told by a club, you're too small, you need to gain size, you're not strong enough, you're not big enough, you're not fast enough. So they take the wrong approach. They'll focus on more of a bodybuilding model and try and just get as big, as bulky as they can, which we all know has its place, but it doesn't directly transfer to the sport. And I think for me that's the big one, focusing on the wrong stuff too soon.
Yeah, no, I agree. They get the old shiny object syndrome, and they're chasing shiny objects and want to find it, and not getting those fundamental basics down.
That's it.
Which
just
I guess
jumping the gun on a few things, and going straight for the sexy exercises and ignoring the big and boring ones.
Yeah, and you'll know, I'm sure, like even at the highest level, you get players kind of doing that, and even there, it's still mastering the the basics and getting the fundamentals right, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Now, tell us a bit about your time with Georgia. Obviously, working internationally must be a real good experience. What was that like?
Yeah, well, it's changed a lot over the years. Well, when I first went to Georgia in 2012, S&C was quite a new thing. I know that seems like a crazy statement, but they didn't really have a lot of S&C structure in place. It was just beginning. It was still the whole players were fearful over squatting. They thought it was going to give them a bad back and things like that. They didn't like lifting too much weight because the culture of S&C in Georgia back then was they had no S&C. It was all stuff passed down from rugby coaches.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of a big part of what World Rugby were doing at the time. And they sent my mentor Craig White over there. We started putting practice in place, upskilled some local coaches. A guy called Tico Arakli, he's the head S&C there now. He's a great guy. He was the first S&C coach over there, but again, he only had limited information and limited skills at that point, and there was nowhere really to go and get it. So give World Rugby credit, they invested some money, they got coaches going over, they got upskilled, and they brought myself over to basically head up the program and put some systems in place. So a big part when I first went there initially was just installing systems. It was creating an academy, it was creating a pathway, and then creating a long-term athletic development model. So there was a progression for the up-and-coming players to go through. Yeah. And then the secondary focus was the national squad, which I know sounds bizarre, but that's the approach we originally took. And then as a product of that, the guys are natural specimens, as you've probably seen. A lot of them are playing high-level rugby at top 14. Yeah. And then so a lot of the case with those guys then was trying to change their belief system, because these guys are playing in top clubs in France, never really done any S&C per se, and now you've turned up trying to tell them, well, hang on a minute, I want you to load that bar up and start lifting. Yeah. So it was a challenge, but it was a good challenge, and we were really acceptable to it. Everyone gave it a chance. We've come on leaps and bounds since then. Moving forward from that. Sorry.
I was just going to say, look, the results recently as well, they've been doing really, really well, putting some good performances in. But it's also, I'm quite surprised that, I don't know, I pictured a big group of Georgians all in the gym squatting crazy weights before, because like you say, that they are specimens. So it's quite a frightening thought that they've now got a good model in place. And I'm sure the future will be bright for them. But sorry, carry on. I know I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, I had the same thought to myself. I got there, I thought, former Soviet country, everyone would be Olympic lifting and everything, throwing weight everywhere. And it was the opposite. I was like, oh, hang on a minute. But the boys really respond well to training. And like you say, the image you've got in your mind now is what it's like now. Yeah. There's, I wouldn't even like to. Some of the guys over there are untapped. They can pretty much lift and move anything you can put in front of them. It's quite scary, and that's just the backs.
So I can see them progressing. The next few years, definitely.
Moving forward from that, my later role, a lot of CPD took place. A lot of the S&C coaches grew. More and more of them have studied and done degrees with, in S&C. A few of the lads have done master's degrees. We've sent them all over the globe. Like, Tico was at Bath last year during the pre-season, spent a few weeks with Alan Ryan there, which I know he learned a lot from. And he spent a bit of time in Ireland when we were playing in Ireland. And, everywhere we've been internationally, we've tried to hook up with some of the local S&C coaches and upskill and get some CPD. So he's come on leaps and bounds. Now he's running the place, easy enough on his own. Moving forward to my later role as a high performance manager, we got some interns in. We had some great interns last year for some sports science. We started using GPS, and we got a sports scientist in. We also got a great S&C coach in. I call Jed McNamara, who's working full time there now. He's a really good coach and a really great lad. He's got a great future ahead of him. Again, bringing different types of aspects to it. Jed has his ideas, I have mine. Tico's got his. We've got Calvin Morris in for the World Cup. So Calvin brought more stuff to the picture again, more CPD, and that's basically where it's grew.
Yeah.
And my last role was basically managing all of that and kind of just helping the program develop itself from the inside out, rather than us foreigners and myself coming in and kind of dictating. It was more about giving the power and the education to the Georgians and letting the Georgians create their own system. And I think that they're doing it very successfully, and they've done a great job.
Yeah, that sounds really good. And we're talking about that. We're talking about, and we already touched on you mentoring with Craig White, and you've talked about you bringing your S&Cs beneath you at Georgia through, and CPD and interns and stuff. So we often ask this to our guests as well: is what advice would you give to upcoming strength coaches?
The number one thing, which basically I found has been the most powerful thing in my career, is find a mentor or find a few mentors. Don't sit in silence and think getting all the book smarts is going to be enough. It's just the beginning. You need to build a network, and the best way I find to build a network is find yourself a mentor who's been there and done it, or who's still actively doing it, who can give you some real world advice. Don't ignore the book smarts. You still need to underpin everything and understand why you're doing it and how to do it. But just get yourself out there, go and spend some time in a club, go and volunteer, get your hands dirty, just go and learn how it works. But my investment with Craig all those years ago was it's paid back 1,000,000 times over. Yeah. It really has. It was the best move I ever did. I know that's what he's focusing on now. He's even coaching. He's actually mentoring actual rugby coaches now in high performance, not just S&C.
Yeah.
And, I recommend anyone to do that, or find somebody in your part of the world who's similar. But for me, that's been the single most powerful thing I've done, was basically have someone to keep me on track and make me accountable and kind of guide me.
Yeah.
You're always going to make your own decisions for the better or the worse. but it's nice to have somebody to turn to.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, couldn't agree more. And now we touched on book smarts. I'm a bit of a bookworm, so I always ask, are there any books you'd recommend?
For me, there's a couple. There's one I haven't finished yet, but from what I've started reading, it is absolutely a brilliant book, and it's Game Changer by Fergus Connolly.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that come out, yeah.
That's looking at things from a completely different perspective, but for me it makes sense because I am all about kind of looking at the mental aspect of the game, and mental recovery, and not just the physical aspect anymore. I'm looking at a more holistic approach. Yeah. So that's a great book. For speed, I still love Charlie Francis' training system, just to explain the basic high-low system. Yeah, definitely. For strength, I like Jim Wendler's 5-3-1 just because of its pure simplicity. West Side Book of Methods, and just a random great book which I enjoy is Legacy by James Kerr, the book about the All Blacks.
Oh yeah.
And basically it's more about the culture they've created rather than the All Blacks. And I think it's a great book for anyone to read.
Yeah, definitely. No, some great recommendations there. So thanks for that. And now your latest kind of venture all looks very exciting. We were talking about before you've almost broken your back carrying all the equipment in and getting everything set up. So tell us about Athlete Factory.
Yeah, my latest venture, which I'm really excited about, it's called Athlete Factory. It's not just a facility. It's a facility along with a training app, a network of elite coaches. And basically, what it is, I'm one of the head coaches there myself. It's a brainchild of Phil Greenan, former British Lion and England Wasps player. Yeah. We've got a facility in Chester, actually built on Chester Rugby Club, so we do have access to pitches.
Oh, cool.
Basically, a lot of the things we covered before is what we're trying to do. We're trying to basically bring elite level training to the masses, if you want, to the public. It's a semi-private facility. We have a training app so you can do your program away from us. We've even had part in manufacturing the equipment, and we can even tailor the equipment to your needs and stuff like that, which is great. So anyone in the area, come and visit us and see some of our toys. But basically, it's a bespoke high-performance facility where we just want to get rid of all this, people getting trained incorrectly, getting stuff off personal trainers, which isn't related to their sports performance. It's about creating a long-term athletic development in people. It's about screening you and profiling your strength and your power and giving you the correct training program and giving you some coaching and creating that, the high-performance environment that you get in a club, but being able to give that to anyone. Yeah. Because from our feedback and our experience, working with a lot of grassroots clubs as well in our time, like I touched on earlier, so many, talented athletes are getting told you're not big enough and getting dropped from academies, you're not strong enough, they're too young, they haven't been trained, they haven't had a chance yet, to evolve. Yeah. So, we're kind of trying to bridge that gap and use all the techniques from our experience along with workshops to basically give them the tools rather than just them, get told, go away, you can't be in the academy, you've lost your slot. We want to be able to bridge that gap and give people, the chance and opportunities they deserve.
Yeah, no, that sounds really good. Like I said, definitely you see more of the general population wanting to train that way and appreciate the benefits of working with a proper strength and conditioning coach, and like I say, helping out those kids who perhaps fallen through the cracks with academies and things like that, and it doesn't necessarily mean the end for them. So that sounds awesome. So keep us posted with that. And lastly, Ryan, where can people learn more about yourself and obviously Athlete Factory? Yeah,
you can learn more about myself from LinkedIn, and that's just be my name, Ryan Gibney. You can find me on the Athlete Factory, which is www.theathletefactory.global, where you can find all about everything we're doing, updates on the site. We will actually be opening on the 1st of December.
Oh, cool.
Anyone in the area, feel free to come down and have a look. It's an open invitation, just come and have a look, see what you think. Give us some feedback. We're always open for feedback. And that's it, really.
Oh, awesome. No, we'll of course share all those links on the show notes. But Ryan, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. Much appreciated. And all the best with Athlete Factory and everything in the future.
Oh, thank you. Thanks a lot for having me.
You're welcome. Cheers, Ryan.
Cheers, Jamie. Thanks, mate. Bye.
Great stuff. So really interesting to hear about Ryan's work with Georgia, and how, despite them looking like freaks, some of them weren't actually gym bunnies, but he's obviously made some really good improvements there, and they're getting good performances. So really interesting to hear. Thank you, Ryan, and all the best with Athletes Factory in Chester. Everyone should check out their website. I've visited the gym. It's an awesome facility. So if you're in the Chester area, go and check that out. Definitely worth a look. In the meantime, keep checking us out at rugbyrenegade.com on social media and YouTube, and of course please subscribe and give us a 5-star review on iTunes or SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, whatever podcast you use, and stay tuned because there will be more podcasts on the way. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Renegade Podcast. For more quality rugby strength and conditioning information, check us out at rugbyrenegade.com. Rugby Renegade, building machines.